you're going to see the VAB, that big building sticking out over the trees. Now, that was at one time the largest building on Earth by volume. Currently ranks as the 4th largest building. How far away do you think we are from the VAB? Shout out some answers.
10 miles, 7
10 miles, 7. A little at 5 miles, or 5 miles away. Kind of hard to judge the distance because there's no other large buildings around the building there, so we're going to get a lot closer to the VAB a little bit later on in our tour. So NASA was started in 1958 under President Eisenhower. We put our first American into space, Alan Shepard, back in 1961. That was over at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Base, where we're heading right now. John F. Kennedy was here in 1963, November 16th, 1963. He got an overview of the whole space program. He got an up-close look at the Saturn V moon rockets. He liked what he saw. A week later, though, he was in Dallas, Texas, where he was assassinated. And a week after that, we actually changed the name of this facility to the John F. Kennedy Space Center in his honor. Before John F. Kennedy Space Center, it was known as MILA, the Merritt Island Launch Area. We're going to be driving by the industrial zone on our way to Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. We're going to pass some of these buildings here. Look out on your right. This first building here is headquarters. This is where we have a lot of our third-party contractors like Boeing and Lockheed have all of their offices. In the middle of the building, right behind the American flag on the top floor, is the office of Bob Cabana. He's the head of the Kennedy Space Center. Former astronaut, he was the commander of the space shuttle that put the first pieces of the International Space Station into orbit way back in 1998. Next building we're passing is Operations and Checkout. Now this is where the astronauts and their families will live just about a week or so before they're scheduled to launch on the space shuttle. We like to call this building the Holiday Inn. So the astronauts, most of whom live in Texas, right outside of Houston, them and their families, they'll do all their training and mission control is in Houston, but they'll live here in apartments for just a few days before they're scheduled to launch. The last building coming up here is the International Space Station facility. Now, any pieces going on board the International Space Station, whether they were made in America or Japan or Russia or Europe, they have to come to this building to be checked out. And by checked out, I mean their pieces are turned on, they make sure they're working properly, they make sure they fit inside the cargo area of the orbiter. It's happened a number of times where we've gotten a piece of equipment that we realize is not going to fit properly inside, so we have to kind of refigure it, send it back. Some of the pieces that have come out of that building recently include Robonaut. Now, Robonaut is the first humanoid robot that's going to be working alongside people on the space station. Right now, he's just a head, a torso, and 2 arms. I don't believe his legs have actually gotten to the station yet. They're going to come up on a later flight. Robonaut kind of looks like C-3PO from the Star Wars movies. But once he's completed, he's going to be working alongside people. He might be doing jobs that might be too difficult for a human to attempt. He'll be going outside the station to repair solar panels, install antennas, maybe he'll be washing the windows, we're not sure. Another piece of equipment that's come out of that building recently and currently launched on Endeavour on Monday was AIMS, the Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer. Now that's a piece of equipment made by CERN out of Switzerland. It's a $2 billion dark matter antimatter locator. It's going to be attached to the International Space Station. It's going to be scanning the heavens for dark matter and antimatter. That's a subject we really don't know too much about now, but we're hoping AIMS can open up whole new doors of discovery for us in the very near future. Lots of people wonder why we chose this location to be the primary launch site of the the American space program. There's 2 reasons why we launch here from the Kennedy Space Center. The first is safety. If we launch a rocket or a space shuttle from here and we lose control of it, we have to abort the mission and it's going to crash. It's going to crash land in the ocean and not a residential neighborhood. There's a story that goes back in the 40s. We were launching experimental rockets out of White Sands, New Mexico. We launched a V2 rocket from the pad. It went over the border into Mexico and crashed. Luckily, it crashed in a cemetery, so nobody was killed. But the Mexican government really wasn't too thrilled about this, so we decided we definitely need a better place to be launching these experimental rockets. The second reason we chose this spot is that you and I are currently traveling 900 miles an hour David is that good of a driver. You would never notice. Yeah. It's actually due to the rotation of the Earth. On the equator, you're actually going about 1,000 miles an hour. You just never know because gravity's holding you down. At this spot, we're going a little over 900 miles an hour. So that's a 900 mile an hour boost that our rockets get when they launch from one of these pads. So that's less fuel you have to put on that rocket, which equals less weight. So there's more people or cargo you can put on these rockets or the space shuttle and launch them from the pads. Going to be going over this bridge over the Banana River. Gets its name because from space it actually looks like a banana. Not a peeled banana, but a banana. If you look out the front of the bus, kind of at the 2 o'clock hour, you might be able to see some cruise ships parked over there at the port. We're at Port Canaveral. And the land all around us here is the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station where we launch all of our unmanned rockets. At the 1 o'clock hour, looking out the bus at the 1 o'clock hour, you'll see 2 tall objects out in the distance over the tree lines. Those are launch pads 17A and B, where we launch the Delta II rockets. The Delta IIs are famous for launching all of the Mars rovers, like Pathfinder, Spirit, and Opportunity. This November, they're going to launch another rover called Curiosity from that pad. Curiosity will leave Earth in November. It's going to land on Mars July of next year. Now, these 2 pads are way out there on our right-hand side. We're going to be making a turn. As you make this turn, you'll see a tall white and black building with the 2 lightning towers on either side. That's launch pad 37. This is where we launched the Delta IVs. A couple weeks ago, we launched a classified payload for the U.S. military from that pad over there. And by classified payload, that's a nice way of me saying spy satellites. And I can't get too much into it. I have to kill you, and we just met. There's a cluster of buildings directly in front of the bus. That's and you'll see the 4 lightning towers with white tops. That is launch pad 40. We used to launch the Titans from that pad. But now there's a commercial company called SpaceX that has rented out the pad. Has anyone here ever used PayPal on the internet? Anyone? Okay. Elon Musk, the guy who created PayPal, he sold that company, and with the profits, he wants to start the first commercial space agency. He has a Falcon 9 rocket, which carries a capsule called the Dragon. And he wants to bring first cargo and then people up to the International Space Station in a few years. Last December, he launched his Falcon 9 from that pad. The capsule detached from the rocket. The rocket fell back into the Atlantic Ocean like it was supposed to. The capsule orbited Earth for about 3 hours and then landed in the Pacific Ocean. They retrieved both capsule and rocket. Successful launch. This summer, he hopes to launch again, and the capsule will go within a few miles of the International Space Station, and by the end of this year, he hopes to dock with the International Space Station. And then by this time next year, we might be using the Falcon 9 to do cargo resupply missions, bringing up food, spare parts, oxygen, all kinds of things to the International Space Station. Maybe within a few years, we might be putting people on that rocket to go to the space station. You'll see a white tower, a big white building with 4 lightning towers out in the distance. That's launch pad 41, where we launched the Atlas V. Now, in August 5th, we're going to launch a probe to the planet Jupiter called Juno. Juno's going to leave the pad there. August 5th of this year, it's going to get to Jupiter 2016. Yeah, and then it's going to start doing polar orbits around Jupiter, taking pictures of the North and South Pole. And from this spot, you can kind of see launch pad 39A where the space shuttle takes off of out in the distance. You see an island here in the Banana River, and all the way to the right of the island you see a large object out in the distance. That's launch pad 39A. We're going to be getting off the bus here for just about 10 minutes. You're going to do me a big favor, just stay on the concrete and stay on the bleachers. Do not walk up to the shoreline, because out here we have our unpaid security force called alligators. So stay away from the shoreline. The alligator can run about 20 miles an hour, so you don't have to outrun the alligators, just outrun your neighbor, that whole joke. Yeah. So if you're ready, guys, we're going to stop out here about 10 minutes. I'll answer questions, I'll take pictures. If you're ready, let's go.